I said get in that seat now, or I'm removing both of you from this plane. The entire cabin froze as a flight attendant pointed at row 23 and said, "What's the problem? It's just a little monkey seat for a little girl." 8-year-old Zoe Mitchell looked up at her mother with tears in her eyes, but she didn't move. She held her mother's hand tighter and whispered, "I'm not sitting there, Mommy." The flight attendant, Carol Hendricks, smirked and crossed her arms, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. Some people's kids just aren't raised right. What Carol didn't know was that Zoe's mother, Dr. Angela Mitchell, was a civil rights attorney who'd spent 15 years prosecuting hate crimes, and she'd just recorded every single word. It started at the gate at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Angela Mitchell stood in the boarding line for Delta Flight 1156 to Houston, her daughter Zoe beside her, bouncing excitedly in her light-up sneakers. Zoe was 8 years old, with 2 puffballs on either side of her head, a purple backpack shaped like a butterfly, and a smile that could light up a room. She was flying to Houston to visit her grandmother for spring break, and she'd been talking about it for weeks. Angela was exhausted. She'd just finished a brutal trial, a discrimination case that had taken everything out of her. She needed this week off. She needed to breathe. But first, they had to get on the plane. They boarded in Group 3. Seats 23A and 23B. Window and middle. Angela carried their small carry-on-ness, and Zoe clutched her stuffed bunny, Mr. Hups. As they walked down the aisle, a flight attendant stood near row 15, checking overhead bins. Her name was Carol Hendricks. White, late 50s, thin lips, cold eyes, 23 years with Delta, and a reputation among her coworkers for being difficult. Carol glanced at Angela and Zoe as they passed. Her eyes lingered on Zoe. Something about the look made Angela's stomach tighten. They reached row 23. Angela stowed their bags, and Zoe climbed into the window seat, pressing her face to the glass. "Look, Mommy, I can see the planes." Angela smiled. "I see, baby." She was about to sit down when Carol appeared. "Excuse me," Carol said, her voice clipped. "You're in 23A and B." Angela looked up. "Yes." Carol glanced at her tablet, then at Zoe. "The child needs to sit in the middle seat." Angela frowned. "She's in the window seat. That's what the ticket says." "Company policy," Carol said. "Children under 12 have to sit in the middle." Angela's frown deepened. That wasn't true. She'd flown with Zoe dozens of times, and no one had ever said that. "That's not a policy," Angela said evenly. "I'd like to see where that's written." Carol's jaw tightened. I'm telling you the policy. Now please move your daughter before we delay this flight." Zoe looked up at her mother, confused. Angela felt the eyes of nearby passengers turning toward them. "Stay calm," she told herself. "Don't make a scene." "Fine," Angela said quietly. "Zoe, honey, switch to the middle seat." Zoe's face fell. "But I wanted to see outside." "I know, baby, but we'll switch later, okay?" Zoe slid reluctantly into the middle seat, her bunny clutched to her chest. Carol watched with a satisfied expression, then walked away. Angela sat in the window seat and took a slow breath. "It's fine," she told herself. "Just let it go." But this was only the beginning. 10 minutes later, the plane was almost fully boarded. The aisle seat next to them, 23C, was still empty. Zoe had pulled out her coloring book and was quietly drawing a picture of a rainbow. Angela checked her phone one last time before switching it to airplane mode. That's when Carol returned. This time, she wasn't alone. She was pulling a young white boy by the hand, maybe 9 or 10 years old, wearing a baseball cap and headphones. "Here we go," Carol said brightly, gesturing to seat 23C. "You can sit right here, sweetie." The boy plopped into the aisle seat and immediately pulled out a tablet. Carol smiled at him. "There you go. Much better than the middle seat, huh?" The boy didn't respond. Carol straightened and walked toward the front of the cabin. Angela stared at the empty middle seat across the aisle in row 23, seat 23D. It was empty. She looked at Zoe, crammed into the middle seat with barely enough room for her backpack at her feet, and she felt the anger start to rise. But before she could say anything, Carol's voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're preparing for departure." Please ensure all carry-on items are stowed and your seatbelts are fastened. Angela clenched her jaw and stayed quiet. Not worth it, she thought. Just get to Houston. But what she didn't know was who was watching. 3 rows behind them, in seat 26C, sat a man named Jerome Watkins. Jerome was 6'2", a retired Delta pilot, and a black man who'd spent 40 years in the skies. He'd seen everything, and he'd experienced enough racism in his career to recognize it when he saw it. He'd watched the whole interaction. He'd seen Carol force the little girl out of the window seat. He'd seen her place the white boy in the aisle seat while the middle seat across from him sat empty. And he knew exactly what this was. Jerome pulled out his phone and opened his notes app. He started typing. Flight 1156, ATL to IAH. The 4th of December, 25. Flight attendant Carol Hendricks. Witnessed a discriminatory seating behavior toward black child and mother. He saved the note, and he kept watching. 15 minutes into the flight, Zoe tugged on Angela's sleeve. "Mommy, I have to go to the bathroom." "Okay, baby," Angela said. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stood, letting Zoe climb over her into the aisle. Angela took Zoe's hand and walked her toward the back lavatory. As they passed Carol in the galley, Carol looked up from her phone. "Where are you going?" she asked sharply. Angela blinked. "The restroom." Carol's eyes dropped to Zoe. "She can go by herself." "She's 8, Angela said. "Old enough," Carol said. "We don't need parents blocking the aisle." Angela felt the heat rising in her chest. "I'm not blocking anything, and I'm going with my daughter." Carol stepped forward. "I need you to return to your seat." "After my daughter uses the restroom," Angela said, her voice firm but controlled. Carol's face flushed red. "You're being disruptive." "I'm taking my child to the bathroom," Angela said slowly. "That's not disruptive." Zoe squeezed Angela's hand tighter, her eyes wide with fear. Carol glanced down at Zoe, and her lip curled. "Fine," she said, "but make it quick. We don't need you people causing problems." Angela froze. "You people." The words hung in the air like poison. Angela looked Carol directly in the eyes. "Excuse me," Angela said, her voice dangerously quiet. Carol didn't repeat it. She just turned and walked back to the galley. Angela's hands were shaking. Zoe looked up at her. "Mommy, what's wrong?" Angela forced a smile. "Nothing, baby. Let's go." They went to the restroom, but Angela's mind was racing. She knew what she'd heard, and she knew what it meant. And just when things seemed calm, when they returned to their seats, Angela pulled out her phone. She opened the voice memo app and hit record. She slipped the phone into the seat pocket in front of her, microphone facing out. Then she waited. 20 minutes later, the beverage cart came down the aisle. Carol was pushing it. She stopped at row 22 and handed out drinks with a smile. Then she reached row 23. She looked at the white boy in 23C. "What would you like, sweetheart?" "Apple juice," the boy said. "Of course," Carol said brightly. She poured him a cup and handed it over with a napkin and a snack box. "There you go." Then she turned to Angela and Zoe. Her smile disappeared. "Beverages," she said flatly. "Apple juice for her, water for me," Angela said. Carol poured the drinks in silence and handed them over without a word. No napkins. No snacks. She moved on to the next row. Angela watched her give the white passengers behind them the same warm smile and extra snacks. Zoe looked down at her cup. "Mommy, how come he got crackers and I didn't?" Angela's jaw tightened. "I don't know, baby." But she did know. She knew exactly why. 30 minutes later, Zoe finished her coloring and yawned. "I'm sleepy, Mommy." "Go ahead and rest, baby," Angela said. Zoe leaned against Angela's shoulder and closed her eyes. Angela stroked her daughter's hair and stared out the window. She thought about all the times this had happened before. The stores where she was followed. The restaurants where she was seated in the back. The schools where Zoe was overlooked, underestimated, dismissed. She'd spent her whole career fighting for justice for others. But when it happened to her own child, it felt different. It felt personal. And she was done staying quiet. But here's the part that changed everything. An hour into the flight, Turbulence hit. The seatbelt sign came on, and the plane rocked gently. Zoe stirred but stayed asleep. A few minutes later, the turbulence got worse. The plane dipped sharply, and several passengers gasped. Overhead bins rattled. A woman in the front let out a small scream. Carol's voice came over the intercom, shaky and irritated. "Flight attendants, take your seats." Angela wrapped her arm around Zoe protectively. The boy in 23C looked scared. He glanced at Angela. "Is it gonna be okay?" he asked quietly. Angela's anger softened. He was just a kid. "Yes, honey," she said gently. "It's just turbulence. The pilots have it under control." The boy nodded and looked back at his tablet. 5 minutes later, the turbulence passed. The seatbelt sign turned off. Carol appeared in the aisle again, smoothing her hair and looking flustered. She walked to row 23 and stopped. She looked at Zoe, still asleep against Angela's shoulder. And then she said it. "You need to move her." Angela looked up. "What?" "She's blocking the aisle," Carol said. Angela glanced at Zoe. She was leaning against Angela, fully in the middle seat. She wasn't blocking anything. "No, she's not," Angela said. "I need to be able to get past," Carol said. "Then go around," Angela said. Carol's face turned red. "Excuse me." "You heard me," Angela said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were steel. "My daughter is asleep. She's not in the aisle. She's not bothering anyone. If you need to get past, go around." Carol's nostrils flared. "I am giving you a direct instruction." "And I'm telling you no," Angela said. The cabin went silent. Passengers turned to look. Jerome, 3 rows back, sat up straighter. Carol leaned down, her voice low and venomous. "If you don't move her right now," Carol hissed, "I will have you removed from this plane the moment we land." Angela didn't flinch. "For what?" "For being uncooperative." "I've cooperated with everything," Angela said. "You're the one harassing me and my daughter." Carol straightened, her hands on her hips. "Fine," she said loudly. "You want to do this the hard way." She turned and marched toward the front of the plane. Zoe woke up, rubbing her eyes. "Mommy." "It's okay, baby," Angela said, though her heart was pounding. "Go back to sleep." But Zoe didn't. She could feel the tension. 2 minutes later, Carol returned. This time, she had a clipboard. She stopped at row 23 and looked down at Angela with a triumphant smile. "I'm filing an incident report," Carol said. "You and your daughter will be met by security when we land." Angela's pulse spiked, but she kept her face calm. "On what grounds?" Angela asked. "Failure to comply with crew instructions," Carol said. "And verbal aggression toward a crew member." "I haven't been verbally aggressive," Angela said. "I've been calm and polite. You're the one who's been rude and discriminatory." Carol's eyes narrowed. "Discriminatory? That's a serious accusation." "Yes, it is," Angela said. "And I have evidence." Carol laughed. "Evidence of what?" Angela reached into the seat pocket and pulled out her phone. She held it up. "This has been recording since we came back from the bathroom," Angela said quietly. "Every word you've said. Every passenger you've treated differently. All of it." Carol's smile faltered. "You can't record me without my consent," Carol said. "Actually, I can," Angela said. "You're in a public space, performing your duties as a federal employee on a commercial aircraft. I have every right to document your behavior." Carol's face went pale. "And just so you know," Angela continued, her voice steady and clear, "I'm an attorney. I specialize in civil rights and discrimination cases. So if you want to file a report, go ahead. But I promise you, mine will be a lot more detailed." The passengers around them were dead silent. The boy in 23C stared with wide eyes. Jerome, in row 26, smiled. Carol opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Then she turned and walked away without another word. Zoe looked up at her mother. "Mommy, what just happened?" Angela kissed the top of her head. "Nothing, baby. Everything's fine." But it wasn't fine. And Carol wasn't done. If only she knew who else was recording. 30 minutes before landing, Carol went to the cockpit. She knocked twice, and the door opened. Captain Lisa Tran looked out. "What's up, Carol?" "I need to report a passenger," Carol said, her voice shaking. "She threatened me. She's been aggressive and uncooperative. I want security waiting when we land." Captain Tran frowned. "What seat?" 23A. Captain Tran pulled up the passenger manifest on her tablet. Her eyes widened. "Dr. Angela Mitchell." Captain Tran said slowly. "I don't care what her title is," Carol snapped. "She threatened me, and I want her removed." Captain Tran stared at Carol for a long moment. "Carol," she said carefully, "do you know who Dr. Angela Mitchell is?" Carol blinked. "No." "Why?" Captain Tran turned the tablet around. On the screen was Angela's passenger profile. Under frequent flyer notes, it read, "Dr. Angela Mitchell, Esquire, Civil Rights Attorney, Southern Poverty Law Center, Diamond Medallion member. Contact VIP services for any issues." Carol's face went white. She's a lawyer." Carol whispered. "Not just a lawyer," Captain Tran said. "She's the lawyer. She just won a $12 million discrimination case against a major airline last year. It was all over the news." Carol's hand started to shake. "I didn't know," she said weakly. "What exactly did you say to her?" Captain Tran asked. Carol hesitated. I told her to move her daughter. She refused." "Why did she need to move her daughter?" "She was blocking the aisle." Captain Tran's expression hardened. "Was she actually blocking the aisle, or were you just annoyed?" Carol didn't answer. Captain Tran sighed. "Carol, I'm not calling security on a passenger unless there's an actual threat. And from what you're telling me, there isn't one. So I suggest you leave Dr. Mitchell alone for the rest of this flight." "But she recorded me." Carol said desperately. "Then I hope you didn't say anything you shouldn't have," Captain Tran said. She closed the cockpit door. Carol stood there, trembling. She walked back to the galley. And for the rest of the flight, she didn't say a word to Angela or Zoe. But the damage was already done. What Carol didn't know was that Jerome had also been recording, and he'd sent the video to someone who could make sure it went viral. The plane landed in Houston at 3:47 p.m. Angela gathered their things and took Zoe's hand. As they walked up the aisle toward the exit, Carol stood in the galley, staring at the floor. Angela paused in front of her. "Carol," Angela said quietly. Carol looked up, her eyes red. "I'm filing a formal complaint with Delta," Angela said. "Not just about today. About the pattern of behavior I witnessed. The way you treated my daughter differently than the white passengers. The comment you made. All of it." Carol's lip trembled. "I didn't mean." "Yes, you did," Angela said. "But here's what you need to understand. My daughter is 8 years old. She's smart and kind, and she notices everything. And today, she learned that some people will treat her differently because of the color of her skin. That's a lesson no child should have to learn. But because of you, she did." Tears rolled down Carol's cheeks. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I don't want your apology," Angela said. "I want you to be better." She turned and walked off the plane, Zoe's hand in hers. Jerome was waiting for them at the gate. "Dr. Mitchell," he said, approaching carefully. Angela turned. "Yes." Jerome extended his hand. "My name is Jerome Watkins. I'm a retired Delta pilot. I was sitting a few rows behind you, and I saw everything." Angela shook his hand. "Thank you." "I recorded part of it," Jerome said. "If you need a witness, I'm happy to provide a statement." Angela's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. That means more than you know." Jerome smiled. "I have a granddaughter about her age," he said, nodding at Zoe. "I'd want someone to speak up for her." He handed Angela his business card. "Call me if you need anything." Angela took the card and squeezed his hand. "Thank you," she said again. Jerome nodded and walked away. Zoe tugged on Angela's sleeve. "Mommy, who was that?" "Someone who did the right thing," Angela said. They walked toward baggage claim. But the story was far from over. And just when things seemed calm, The next morning, Angela sat at her mother's kitchen table in Houston, typing on her laptop. Zoe was in the living room, watching cartoons. Angela was drafting a formal complaint to Delta's Office of Customer Relations. She attached the audio recording. She attached Jerome's contact information. She outlined every incident in detail. The 4-seat change. The differential treatment during beverage service. The "you people" comment. The harassment about Zoe blocking the aisle. The threat to have them removed. She hit send. Then she called her office. Southern Poverty Law Center. How may I direct your call? Hi, this is Dr. Angela Mitchell. Can you connect me to Marcus? Of course, Dr. Mitchell. One moment. A click. Angela. Marcus Benton's voice came through. He was a senior counsel at SPLC and Angela's mentor. How's your vacation? It just became a case, Angela said. She told him everything. Marcus was silent for a long moment. You have a recording? He asked. Yes. And a witness? A retired Delta pilot. Marcus exhaled. File the complaint with Delta first. Give them 72 hours to respond. If they don't take it seriously, we'll go public. Agreed, Angela said. And Angela, Marcus said, I'm sorry this happened to Zoe. Angela's throat tightened. Me too. She hung up. An hour later, her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Hello. Dr. Mitchell, this is Richard Kelly, Senior Vice President of Customer Experience for Delta Airlines. I just received your complaint, and I want to personally apologize. Angela sat up straighter. Go on. We take these allegations extremely seriously, Richard said. We've already launched an internal investigation, and Carol Hendricks has been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome. That's a start, Angela said. But I want more than an apology. What do you want? Richard asked. I want accountability, Angela said. I want mandatory bias training for all crew members. I want transparent reporting on discrimination complaints. And I want a formal, public apology, not to me, but to every black passenger who's been treated this way and didn't have the resources to fight back. Richard was quiet for a moment. We can do that, he said. Good, Angela said. Because if you don't, I'm going to make sure every news outlet in this country knows what happened to my 8-year-old daughter on your plane. I understand, Richard said. We'll be in touch within 24 hours. He hung up. Angela sat back and closed her eyes. She felt exhausted, but she also felt something else. Hope. But here's the part no one saw coming. That afternoon, Angela's phone started blowing up. Text after text. Call after call. She opened Twitter. The video was everywhere. Jerome hadn't just recorded the incident. He'd posted it. The caption read, Retired Delta pilot here. Witness a flight attendant harass a black mother and her 8-year-old daughter on Flight 1156 today. This is unacceptable. Delta, do better. The video showed everything. Carol forcing Zoe out of the window seat. Carol giving snacks to the white boy but not Zoe. Carol confronting Angela in the aisle. The video had been posted 6 hours ago. It already had 2.3 million views. The hashtag #DeltaDiscrimination was trending nationwide. Comments poured in. This breaks my heart. That little girl did nothing wrong. I'm never flying Delta again. Carol needs to be fired. Thank you for posting this. Black mothers shouldn't have to fight alone. Angela stared at her screen in shock. Her phone rang. It was Marcus. Have you seen Twitter? He asked. I'm looking at it now, Angela said. Good, Marcus said. Because CNN just called. They want to interview you. Angela's heart raced. What? This is national news now, Marcus said. You have a platform. Use it. Angela looked across the room at Zoe, curled up on the couch with Mr. Hobbs. Let me think about it, Angela said. Don't think too long, Marcus said. The story's moving fast. He hung up. Angela sat there for a long moment. Then she walked over to Zoe. Baby, can we talk? Zoe looked up. Okay, Mommy. Angela sat beside her. You know what happened on the plane yesterday? Zoe nodded. The mean lady. Angela took a breath. A lot of people are talking about it now. And some people want to hear our story, but I won't share it unless you're okay with it. Zoe tilted her head. Why do they want to hear it? Because what happened to you was wrong, Angela said. And if we talk about it, maybe it won't happen to other little girls. Zoe thought for a moment. Then she said, Will the mean lady get in trouble? Yes, Angela said. Good, Zoe said. Then we should tell them. Angela's eyes filled with tears. She pulled Zoe into a hug. Okay, baby, she whispered. We'll tell them. 2 days later, Angela sat across from a CNN anchor in a studio in Houston. Zoe sat beside her, holding Mr. Hops. The anchor, a black woman named Kimberly Lawson, smiled gently at Zoe. Hi, Zoe. How are you feeling? Good, Zoe said quietly. Kimberly turned to Angela. Dr. Mitchell, thank you for being here. Can you walk us through what happened on Flight 1156? Angela told the story, every detail, every moment. And when she got to the part where Carol told Zoe to sit in the monkey seat, the studio went silent. Kimberly's face hardened. She said that to an 8-year-old child. Yes, Angela said. And how did you respond, Zoe? Kimberly asked gently. Zoe looked at her mom, then back at the camera. I said I'm not sitting there, Zoe said softly, because I'm not a monkey. I'm a person. The control room went silent. Kimberly's eyes filled with tears. You are absolutely right, Kimberly said. You are a person. A beautiful, smart, strong person. And I'm so proud of you for standing up for yourself. Zoe smiled a little. The interview aired that night. Within hours, it had 8 million views. Delta's stock dropped. Protests erupted at airports in Atlanta, Houston, and New York. And Carol Hendricks' name was everywhere. 3 days after the interview, Delta released a statement. After a thorough investigation, Delta Airlines has terminated flight attendant Carol Hendricks for conduct that violates our core values of respect and dignity. We deeply apologize to Dr. Angela Mitchell and her daughter Zoe for the unacceptable treatment they received. We are committed to ensuring this never happens again. The statement was accompanied by a pledge. Mandatory anti-bias training for all crew members. A third-party review of all discrimination complaints from the past 5 years. A $250,000 donation to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. Free lifetime travel for Zoe and her family. Angela read the statement at her mother's kitchen table. Zoe sat beside her, coloring. Did we win, Mommy? Zoe asked. Angela looked at her daughter, this brave, beautiful, fierce little girl. Yes, baby, Angela said. We won. Zoe smiled. Good, she said. Now can we get ice cream? Angela laughed, really laughed, for the first time in days. Yes, she said. We can get ice cream. 2 weeks later, Angela received a letter in the mail. It was handwritten on lined notebook paper. The return address was from a woman in Detroit named Shanice. Angela opened it. Dear Dr. Mitchell, I saw your interview with your daughter. I cried for an hour. 3 years ago, I was kicked off a plane for being loud. I wasn't loud. I was just black. I never said anything. I was too scared, too ashamed. But watching you and Zoe stand up made me realize I didn't have to carry that shame anymore. So I filed a complaint. And today, the airline contacted me to settle. Thank you for showing me that I mattered. Thank you for showing my daughter that she matters too. With gratitude, Shanice. Angela read the letter 3 times. Then she put it in a folder labeled Why We Fight. It wasn't the first letter, and it wouldn't be the last. Angela didn't set out to become a symbol. She just wanted to protect her daughter. But in standing up for Zoe, she reminded every black mother watching that their children's dignity is worth fighting for. That keeping the peace is not the same as keeping your power. That silence doesn't protect you, it protects them. And that sometimes the most revolutionary thing a black woman can do is say, no, not my child. Not today. Zoe learned a hard lesson on that plane. She learned that the world won't always be kind. That people will see her skin before they see her heart. But she also learned something else. She learned that she doesn't have to shrink to make others comfortable. She learned that her voice matters. She learned that when someone tries to put her in a box labeled less than, she has every right to say, "I'm not sitting there." And maybe that's the most important lesson of all. Because Carol Hendricks thought she had the power. She thought a title and a uniform made her untouchable. She thought she could humiliate a little black girl and her mother, and no one would care. But she forgot something. She forgot that black mothers don't just raise children. We raise warriors. We raise truth-tellers. We raise little girls who know their worth and aren't afraid to defend it. And when you come for one of our children, you don't just face us. You face every ancestor who fought for us to be here. Every woman who refused to sit in the back. Every mother who said, "Not my baby." Angela didn't just win a case. She sent a message. To every airline. To every corporation. To every person who thinks they can mistreat black women and children without consequence. We're watching. We're recording. And we will hold you accountable. Zoe is 9 now. She still flies. She still asks for the window seat. And when flight attendants smile at her, she smiles back. But she also knows, deep in her bones, that if anyone ever tries to make her feel small again, she has the power to stand tall. Because her mother taught her that dignity isn't given. It's claimed. It's defended. It's passed down from generation to generation like a sacred inheritance. And no one, not a flight attendant, not a system, not a world that refuses to see her, can take that away. Be honest. Would you have had the courage to speak up like Angela did? Or would you have stayed quiet to avoid conflict? Drop your answer in the comments. Because these stories don't end when justice is served. They end when we stop accepting anything less than the respect we deserve. And when we teach our daughters that their worth is non-negotiable. That's when we win. Not just in courtrooms, but in every space we occupy. Every seat we claim. Every fight we refuse to back down from. Angela and Zoe didn't just take a flight that day. They took a stand. And the world is better for it.